Basketball. Miami and Boston, Game 4 last night. So the Celtics said they needed to start better, right, after that terrible loss in Game 3. Oh, they started better. Jumped out to an 18-1 lead, up by as many as 32 last night, thanks to Jason Tatum. Tatum following up that 10-point effort in Game 3 with 31 last night. A big bounce-back win for the Boston Celtics. They now tie this series up at 2 games apiece. Rick, was last night more about the Celtics winning or the Heat losing?
It's the Celtics win, Jenna. It's always about the Celtics, at least when it comes to this series. I know Miami Heat fans, you feel like you're being underserved. You had the best record in the Eastern Conference, and yet we're talking about the Boston Celtics being definitively the better team. Well, they are. They're the better playoff team. And we've seen this from the beginning of the series. The Celtics don't have Al Horford or Marcus Smart for the first game, and yet they nearly win that game. Game 2, they blow Miami out on their home floor. Game 3, they barely show up. 23 turnovers, play as badly as the Celtics can, and still have a chance ultimately to win that game. Don't get it done. And then once again, they turn it up. They turn it on in Game 4, much as they did Game 2. And it's a runaway win. This entire series is being dictated by how the Boston Celtics play. If they play up to their abilities, then it's really not a contest, especially when you take out, and this shows you the vulnerability of the Miami Heat. Tyler Herro, 6th man of the year. Their leading scorer based on the fact that Jimmy Butler didn't play enough games to qualify for that. When your 6th man, when your guy coming off the bench is your leading scorer, that shows a vulnerability offensively, and they didn't even have Tyler Herro last night. So that's right. I thought from the very beginning of the season, I love the Miami Heat. I love that they play consistently well. But I never thought that offensively they were going to be good enough to be a title contender, regardless of what their regular season record was. And Nick, you are holding your head. You're in some sort of pain. Please explain.
Yeah, I just think listen, I picked Miami in 7 in a hard-fought series. I obviously would not be shocked if Boston wins the series. Whenever you pick a series to end in 7, you are by definition saying that you think both the teams are very, very close. All right? So yes. I'm not acting like it would be shocking if Boston wins the series. But I think your telling of the series, which goes along with how most people are telling the series, is just not accurate. You said Game 1, Boston almost won. They were down 17 points going into the 4th quarter. And they didn't have Marcus Smart. And the Heat didn't have their starting point guard, Kyle Lowry. Game 3. Okay, I understand that. Game 3, the Miami Heat won without Jimmy Butler playing in the second half. You then talk about how important Tyler Herro is. He didn't play last night. The idea that we could have it. Okay, these two teams played 82 regular season games. They won, I think, 53 and 51. So in the regular season, they were close to equivalent. Let's just call it a wash, right? These two teams, neither got threatened at all in round 1. Both of them played teams in round 2 that were battered. The Bucks without Middleton, the Sixers without Embiid for the first 2 games. They went 6 and 7 games respectively. And I'm not even going to say Miami beat their team quicker, because I think even without Middleton, the Bucks are a better team than Philly was that series. And now we played 2 games, and it's 2-2. For anyone to sit here and say one team is definitively better than the other is baffling to me. I just don't. At some point, the games and the evidence has to matter. In 4 games this series, each team is led by 20 in their 2 wins and obviously trailed by 20 in their 2 losses. They were equivalent in the regular season. They were equivalent in the playoffs leading up to it. Their star players, Tatum and Butler, have almost identical stat lines this postseason. What more do the Miami Heat have to show people that they are a legitimate championship contender? That would be my question. It's not that I think Boston has no chance. It's that I think people are acting like a team that made the finals 2 years ago, was the 1 seed this year, and is 2-2 in the Eastern Conference Finals, is lucky to be there. How can that be true?
Here's how, Nick. That team you mentioned that went to the finals 2 years ago was swept last year in the playoffs. Swept. All right, you always leapfrog
so
that
Boston.
fact when you talk about them being in the finals a couple of years
last
ago.
Year. And Boston lost in 5 in the playoffs.
Five is different than 4. All right?
But they lost
sweep
to a
is
team.
different than a gentleman's sweep. And Boston had younger players. Boston had younger players that are improving. We knew Jason Tatum was 23 years old last year. Jaylen Brown was 24. We knew they were going to get better. Is Kyle Lowry getting better? Jimmy Butler, is he getting better? I mean, he's still very good, obviously, but is he getting better? That's the difference.
No, but what about this
so
year?
to watch these two teams, like, look, Miami is well coached. They play hard. They're great defensively. All of that is true. And so they're not going to get embarrassed. But people are putting Boston ahead of them because of what I just mentioned, the sweep last year. Also, Miami didn't face as tough of a schedule in the playoffs. Atlanta, come on, mediocre at best. Philadelphia, a lot of problems there. James Harden not showing up. Also, they're banged up. Embiid missed the first 2 games. Brooklyn is better than Atlanta. Don't equate Brooklyn with Kevin Durant to Atlanta with Trae Young. All right, and then Milwaukee, you want to dismiss them now that, now that the series is over.
I'm not dismissing them at all.
Chris Middleton's out. They still were a very good team, even without Chris Middleton. They had the best player in the world. So Boston has gone the tougher road. Boston's defense is better slightly, but it's the best in the league. It's certainly best in the East. And then, Nick, you'll even admit this. Rick said it. Miami has trouble scoring, and now Tyler Hero's out, and Jimmy Butler's got knee issues, and they have two of the 3 best scorers are wearing Celtics green, and that's Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. And so Boston is the better team. And like I said before the series, Celtics in 6, Wilds. I'm standing by it.
Okay, you talked about the Heat having trouble scoring. I think that's the understatement of the year. Rick, I'm going to run through the Heat starters and how many points they scored.
Please do.
Tell me when you're interested in something. PJ Tucker, 0.
Okay.
Jimmy, 6.
What?
Bam, 9. Kyle, 3. Max Strus, 0. Do some quick math.
What?
15, 18 total points from your starters. Not great. So the question is this: how do you want to break up the blame pie? Because they came out so slow and so sort of like lacking a real intensity. I think Mike Breen said it in the broadcast. It felt very unheat-like. But I don't know how much of it. Well, I'm going to take a guess. I'm saying it's 60-40 health to intensity and maybe more so. Like, I don't know who's really healthy here, even if they're on the floor. PJ was in some sort of air cast. Jimmy obviously missed some time.
Yeah.
Kyle missed some time. So it's a real sort of battlefield promotions out there on who's starting games for both sides. And I know the teams are deep, but I just feel like, the Heat doctor has got to be the MVP for the rest of this series if the Heat are going to come back.
Wild, you bring up a good point in that fatigue or injury is having a huge impact, I believe, on these playoffs overall and in this series in particular. But again, it's a reflection of the difference in the two teams. The flexibility that the Boston Celtics have, because I believe they are a deeper team. They're a more flexible team. They can operate and still function while missing a market. I mean, they did what they did last night without Marcus Smart, who is their fire starter. Derek White was able to step up. And again, Nick, I don't want to bash the Miami Heat. I actually admire the fact that during the regular season and in the playoffs for the most part, they play more consistent. They play closer to their max than maybe any other team. But their max simply isn't as high as the Boston Celtics. They don't have the same scoring power as Brew mentioned. They have more versatility in terms of how they can play. And look, both teams have been missing players, but you're not going to tell me that the Miami Heat have been missing more players than the Boston Celtics. If Robert Williams isn't there, Al Horford isn't there. If Al Horford isn't there, Marcus Smart isn't there. Yes, they've been missed. Kyle Lowry missed games.
Wait.
Jimmy Butler is compromised. Tyler Hero has missed a game. But to suggest that is what has made this even is not
the Miami
simply
Heat
not accurate.
have played
the Boston
one
Celtics have been more
half.
compromised.
Okay, they've played one half the entire series with Lowry, Butler, and Hero, and they were up 15 at the half. They played the idea that the Heat have been skirting injury-free. Lowry missed the first 2 games. Hero missed the 4th game. Jimmy Butler missed half of the 3rd game. They played. No, but is it not accurate that in Game 3 which I believe was the healthiest both teams have been? Robert Williams has been in and out of the lineup all postseason. I don't know if the Celtics can really bank on Robert Williams. The only injuries the Celtics had in Game 3 were the Paul Pierce memorial injuries. My career is over. Actually, I'm going to miss 3 minutes. They played one half where the Heat were whole, and they won it by 15 points. Now, if Butler's damaged the rest of the way, if Hero can't play the rest of the way, then they'll lose. But y'all keep disrespecting the Heat.
The series shifts back to Miami, Game 5 tomorrow. Let's have